When the World Comes to Texas is a podcast from our partners at KERA in North Texas, exploring what it means to bring the World Cup to the Lone Star State. We're sharing these episodes every Tuesday night through June 16th at texasstandard.org. You can find out more and find the program wherever you get your podcasts.
We're DC United, your Major League Soccer team. And his glasses were down at the edge of his nose, and he looked up across that big mahogany desk, and said, "You mean communist football?" It's like people didn't even think it was an American sport.
The world's largest soccer tournament is coming to North Texas this summer. Millions of fans are expected to join local residents in one of the biggest sports celebrations ever in the region. Arlington is hosting 9 games, the most of any host city. So we're going to be watching some pretty big teams. Let's run down them. England, the Netherlands, Japan, and of course the defending champion, Argentina. It is arguably the last World Cup for superstar Leo Messi.
But this is not our first rodeo. 32 years ago, the United States hosted its first ever World Cup, and Dallas had one of the best games of the tournament, a thrilling 3-2 win by Brazil over the Netherlands. I'm here with Hitchcock, a soccer management executive for more than 30 years, to talk about the 1994 World Cup, his years working in soccer, and what to expect from this year's tournament. So, Hitch, traveling back in time, what were you doing in 1994, and what was your experience of the World Cup in Dallas?
So I was living in Richmond, Virginia at the time, and Washington, D.C. Was one of the host cities in 1994. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I met about 10,000 Dutch fans, all wearing orange wooden shoes. And this is before the internet and social media. We just happened to run into them in D.C. And I still remember Eric from Holland, that it was maybe one of the greatest days of my life, just hanging out with these Dutch fans and marching to RFK Stadium from downtown. And they had this incredible Dutch tailgate party, and we tried food we'd never had, and hung out with the Dutch fans. And fortunately, they speak English, because I do not speak Dutch. Yeah. And it was just one of those magical experiences. And for me, it was transformational, and so I think what we're going to experience, and that was 1994, before there was really a soccer culture in this country. What we're going to experience with the World Cup this summer is that times 10, right? I think, to see the world coming to Dallas-Fort Worth, the passion for the game that they're going to bring. We're a soccer nation, and so it's grown a lot since the 94 World Cup, and in large part because of the success of the 94 World Cup.
In part because of the success of that and the work that's been done since then, much of which you've been a part of, on the ground level. I just want to give people a little bit of your resume here. Here's what our notes say. You were there during the birth of Major League Soccer.
I came out of the success of the 94 World Cup. One of the things that FIFA wanted was a premier league in America, which is Major League Soccer. And so they launched Major League Soccer as a result of the 94 World Cup.
Yeah, you were also general manager for FC Dallas. So give us a sense those early years, because I know now there's a bit of a challenge to sort of bring American sports fans to soccer, to football, as we know it's called elsewhere. What would you say the biggest accomplishment has been?
Yeah, so I think the sport has become mainstream. The sport has become cool, and as a result of that, you're seeing it's a major part of the community. Back in 1994, you could. Now I think it was 50 million people applied to get tickets to go to the games at Cowboy Stadium. I did not win. I don't know about y'all, but I did not win the lottery. Literally and figuratively, it's a lottery. In 1994, I don't think you could walk up and buy them, but you could go onto Ticketmaster and call and get your tickets without any issues whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And so just the game has just grown to just, it's in a completely different stratosphere. But I'll share with you, the 94 World Cup really for me on a personal and professional level was transformational. I'd just graduated college, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and always enjoyed the game of soccer, played college soccer. I grew up on military bases where the game was always popular, even 40 plus years ago. But experiencing that World Cup and meeting guys like Eric from Holland made me realize the world's game is coming to America, and there's no reason it can't become one of the most popular sports here. And Lamar Hunt and Phil Anschutz and the founding fathers and pioneers of Major League Soccer felt the same. And so I decided to work in Major League Soccer. And so to talk about how far the sport has come, so there was no job in Major League Soccer. I wasn't willing to take no as an answer, so I said, you don't have to pay me anything and this is pre-internet email. I said, give me a phone book, the Yellow Pages, which some of your older audience probably are familiar with. Younger may not be, because our young staff, they're like, Yellow Pages, what is that? What website is that? I said, oh, it wasn't a website. It was a big book. And
it showed up, and depending on what city you lived in, you could use it for a door stopper if you had to.
I think so. I used it to make 200 calls a day to every landscaping company, law firm, and hotel, restaurant, just trying to sell 4 tickets at a time. I made zero. I was commission-only sales, just trying to sell tickets in Washington, D.C. for DC United. That's how I got my foot in the door and worked my way up from there. And so literally how far the sport has come. Washington, D.C., very cosmopolitan market. You would think, in 1996, 1997, the first couple of years of the league, of Major League Soccer, that, that's the city that would embrace it, right? Well, it did not embrace it early on. Very humble beginnings. And I always tell the story of, I called, finally got in with a big law firm on K Street near the White House, and the partner's assistant said, yeah, he'd like to meet with you. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. So I go in, our team's called DC United, and I sit down across his big mahogany desk, and, he's an older, partner, oversees their tickets for, at that time, called the Redskins. At the time, the basketball team was called the Bullets. They didn't have a baseball team, and the Capitals. And he sits down, and once again, our team's called DC United, and his assistant makes the introduction. Oh, this is Michael Hitchcock from DC United. And he goes, oh, son, I'm sorry I wasted your time. We already give to the United Way. He thought I was with the United Way.
Yep.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
And so I said,
that's what you were coming up against.
That's what we were dealing with, right?
You had a branding issue, for one.
A branding issue and an interest issue, because, at one, I don't take no for an answer. So I said, oh, sir, good news. We're not the United Way. We're DC United, your Major League Soccer team. And his glasses were down at the edge of his nose, and he looked up across that big mahogany desk, and said, you mean communist football? It's like people didn't even think it was an American sport. There was this anti-sentiment against soccer, right? If you weren't, from a country where it's soccer loving and you grew up with the game, and there were those people in Washington, D.C. And so at that time we had players from El Salvador, Bolivia. That was, as George Bush would say, strategery, right? Because those fans would come watch the players from their country as we were trying to build and grow the game with just your traditional soccer market, which started through the kids who were all playing soccer. And so those kids are now adults. And so that soccer bubble is really starting to hit right now. But those were the real humble beginnings of Major League Soccer. But we just powered through. We believed in it, and we weren't going to take no for an answer. So we found ways to sell and market the game early on. And, that soccer ball would be an example of our number one promotion. We do free soccer ball night, where you have a sponsor and a media outlet and a co-branded soccer ball, and the weekend that all the parents would have to go buy a soccer ball from their local store, we gave it away for free if you bought a ticket. Well, we would get 20,000 people for that game. And it was more than that one game. It was introducing people to the sport, wow, this isn't that bad, and I can have a good taco or hot dog or slice of pizza from a local restaurant at a game. I can tailgate with my friends. So it was really just planting those seeds and then just and watering it and cultivating it. And now, fast forward 30 years later, it's one of the most popular sports in the country, and just past baseball in popularity, and it's closing in on basketball. I don't think we ever catch up with American football, but you don't need to. It's a continent that is a country that the niche is there, and the niche is growing by the day. And this World Cup is going to, I think, be absolutely transformational for the sport of soccer in this country. Every 4 years when the World Cup happens, we see new eyes and ears that are open and excited and want to watch the games on TV. Well, now they're going to be at watch parties with their neighbors, their friends, and coming out of the pandemic, there's pent-up demand for community. And so, people want to come together with their community. The world's biggest sporting event is right down the road, and I don't think anyone truly can understand what's about to hit. It's going to be absolutely special. It's going to, I think they're viewing it as 9 Super Bowls from an economic impact, so it's going to help local businesses. We all need that as business owners coming out of 2025, and a challenging year with cost of goods and services continuing to increase. So I think this will it's going to open a lot of eyes and ears to what the sport can be, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, yeah, let me ask you, what is the next step that you want American soccer to take? Because the last time the World Cup was here, the MLS got formed out of it. What's the next step after this next World Cup 30 years later?
Yeah, so I think what we're going to see is, you truly now have a professional soccer pyramid, right? Which, Major League Soccer came out of the 1994 World Cup. Since then, you have 100 plus, minor league, semi-pro, whatever term you want to use, lower division soccer clubs all over the country. And so what I think we're going to see coming out of this World Cup is every community in America will have a fourth, third, second division professional team. MLS will continue to be in the major markets, but we're seeing it already happen, and we own 22 teams around the country. Boone, North Carolina, we've got a 4th Division pro team that averages 3,000 fans a game in Boone, North Carolina. In Annapolis, Maryland, we have a 4th Division team that gets close to 9,000 fans a game. And so Lubbock, Texas, our team averages close to 5,800 fans a game. So my point of sharing that is, there's real interest out there in soccer. And so what happens is when people realize there's a business behind this, that's where the investment follows. So I think you're going to see more investment coming into the game at all levels, facilities, youth soccer, which is already, obviously very, very big, especially in markets like Dallas-Fort Worth. I think you're going to see from a sort of big picture standpoint, things called solidarity payments, training compensation, which happens all over the world. You don't have that here. That will then create free youth academies because there will be a business around it where you don't have to charge kids to play. If you're not charging kids to play soccer, that opens it up to the number of kids who can play soccer. And, we need to find our Messi. You mentioned him in the intro, right?
Yeah.
Our Messi, I believe, doesn't come from Dallas-Fort Worth. I think our Messi comes from Lubbock, Texas. But the problem is the opportunities don't exist right now. So, they say talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not. So what we need to do is build out that infrastructure so we look like England, Brazil, all the soccer-loving countries of the world. There's 780 professional teams in England. 780. That's amazing.
With youth academies where kids start affiliated with professional teams by the time they're children.
Correct.
Which is not something that exists here at the moment, as I understand it.
And so it's all about community. And so, you are born and raised a fan of that club. It's generational. You'll support it more than anything in the world. And, that's why promotion relegation means so much to those communities, because when you get relegated, it's almost like a death in the family.
Meaning it's essentially like a baseball team. If you did bad enough, you could get knocked down to the minors. It adds a whole different...
Imagine if the New York Yankees were playing the Frisco Rough Riders, right? That's what can happen in soccer. And so they've announced that in 2028, USL, which is one of the professional ecosystems, which has a series of professional leagues, is bringing promotion relegation. Now, once again, we're in a unique challenge because we can't bust every game. You got to fly all over the country. So the business model has to support having promotion relegation, but fans want it. Fans want to see promotion relegation, and I think you're going to see that coming out of this World Cup.
Yeah.
And then you wonder to what extent, sort of our ecosystem of media jump on board. Will there be the kind of show like American Idol, which plucked singers out of obscurity who didn't have a platform right before YouTube to show their singing skills? Are you seeing that sort of thing take shape on social media where youth clubs are sort of demonstrating who their star players are, and there's a kind of a recruitment effort going on? Do you see that piece of the puzzle coming together?
It's pretty incredible. Through social media, through this whole new media world, soccer now, has the microphone, right? Where, 30 years ago when MLS launched, and I'd even argue probably 10 years ago, you're fighting for your traditional media outlets to cover you. Well, now, once again, when the business and the audience is there, and it's a global audience, there's advertisers. When there's advertisers, there's more content that's created. So, it's that sort of vicious, cycle. It's all hitting with soccer in this country. And not only is it going to be the Men's World Cup this summer, but the Women's World Cup's coming in 2031, which I happen to think for American sports fans can be as big as the Men's World Cup, because the women contend for a World Cup championship. We love to win, right? So I think there's going to be a real movement in the women's side of the game.
Yeah.
You're already starting to see it with women's sports in general, which is absolutely amazing. But I think, at that lower division minor league, which is really the masses, that's the numbers, right? You're only going to have 30 MLS teams. There's only a certain number of markets that can support paying Messis of the world, right? But there's hundreds of lower division markets that can support an equivalent of single A baseball, double A baseball, but it's got to be the right business model. I think it needs to be men's and women's soccer, providing real opportunities. And, the beautiful thing about minor league sports is there's no players union. So our players for our teams, they do hundreds of player appearances in the community. They go to the Boys and Girls Club, free clinics, speaking engagements, the kicking and reading programs to encourage kids to read books, active lifestyle to get kids exercising. You can use soccer as sort of do good, be good, right? You got the ability to do it. And at the lower division level, all they care about is they go to a stadium and they see that same player who came into their school, they saw on the sideline of a field that helped coach him or do a free clinic. They want to see him in the stadium. And the beautiful thing about America, we have no shortage of world-class stadiums. I think in Dallas-Fort Worth, if you look at the number of $100 million high school football stadiums that can be used for other community events, we've got the facilities. Other parts of the world don't have the facility. So there's no excuses why we can't take the sport to the next level, but also use it to help grow the communities of which we're proud members of.
Yeah, and those facilities are relatively new. The high schools in Allen, for example, large facilities. Would you have ever have imagined these would be the talking points 30 years later, that you'd go from, no, I'm sorry, we're not the United Way, to what you're talking about now?
I don't think any of us really did. Even, and I had the pleasure of working for Lamar Hunt, who, was the owner of FC Dallas when I came and worked for him. And there was no shortage of vision. There was no shortage of commitment to what this sport can become. But the one thing that I don't think any of us truly realized or could have ever appreciated is the power and impact of that cell phone, right? And the ability to share information and to be able to access, where, when I grew up on military bases, where the young troops fell in love with the sport of soccer, even if they didn't grow up or soccer didn't exist in their little town, they went to Bayern Munich games when they were stationed in Germany. And you cannot help but fall in love with the game when the passion is so real. Everyone's wearing the jersey on game day. You've got a good beer in your hand and you're cheering for your hometown team, right? That's what this thing's all about. I don't think any of us could have ever expected it would hit the levels that it's hitting right now. And I literally feel grateful every day that I wake up because, I told you the nice stories about my early days of selling tickets. There are some that they were not that nice to me and telling me where the door was and what I could do and where it should hit me when I leave, right? Like, there was, people just didn't want this sport. And it's amazing to see where it is today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the World Cup final, July 19th at New York, New Jersey Stadium. Are you willing to make a call on that?
Ooh, boy, that's a tough one. It's such a unique tournament because obviously you've got to be good, and all these teams that have qualified are good. The Italys of the world, which, haven't qualified in 3 World Cups, one of the best soccer nations in the world didn't qualify. So all the nations that have qualified are great. I think it's hard to not believe Spain is going to be there if they stay healthy, but there's just so many things that have to go your way. And I think what's going to be interesting and unique is to see in this World Cup the amount of travel that the teams have to do.
Yeah.
It's massive, right? Once again, it's literally a continent because you have Canada, U.S., and Mexico that are hosting it. But even if it was just the U.S., and then the heat is a real issue that they, traditionally a lot of these national teams are not accustomed to. And, what does that do over a month-long tournament as far as the impact? And then the final thing is, and I think, we all talk about, there are special players that step up in special moments. Messi is a great example of that. Seems to do it every time he gets a free kick and the game is on the line in the 90th minute. But the reality is there's only a few Messis in the world. How do all these other incredible players respond to having their entire country, that weight on their shoulders, right? Like literally the pressure is something that I think it'll be interesting to see how people respond to it. And it's going to be the biggest World Cup in the history of World Cups. I mean, literally it'll be the biggest sporting event in the history of the world as far as the number of people who are going to be watching it, the ability to watch it on your phone, in person, at watch parties. It's going to be unlike anything we've ever seen. How do these incredible athletes that have been training their whole lives for this moment, you see it where a PK should be an easy goal, a PK to make it to the World Cup, you have the best players in the world miss them.
Mm-hmm. A penalty kick for those listening who might not be familiar.
Thank you. Good point of clarification.
I got you.
Yes.
She did that for me.
Yeah.
And for all of these who are a reflection of me, who are watching our Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, Hitch, you're in the middle of this. This is your life. It has been for a very long time. What will you actually be doing during some of the biggest games?
Well, I can't seem to get tickets, even though I've been doing this for 31 years. And
I thought you'd say that.
Your connections mean nothing.
They are meaningless. Yeah. I thought I was important in this game, but I realized I'm low on the
You're not
totem pole.
alone. We've heard that a lot.
Yeah. So I plan on spending the summer soccer. We're going to have a number of watch parties at our lifestyle soccer shop in historic McKinney called Pro Rail Soccer Shop. We're working with the city of McKinney to work with Tufts Brewery on doing some big watch parties with big screen TVs and a lot of fun promotions, live music, cool food trucks representing the countries that are playing. And then some of the games, we're just going to do barbecues with good family and friends and just have a great time at our house. But we're going to enjoy every kick of the ball. And we've been working towards this moment for over 30 years. So we're going to make sure we enjoy it.
And Michael Hitchcock, thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the coverage. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we always say make the most of this summer of soccer because it's one that whether it's with your friends or your family, there's going to be some special moments to be able to come together with your community and tune in to, if you can't get tickets to the big match in the big stadium, lots of watch parties. I think every bar, restaurant, brewery is going to be showing games, doing promotions. Driving down here from historic McKinney, I saw 4 billboards promoting soccer this summer. Mm-hmm. You don't see that, normally. So it's coming. So appreciate you covering and promoting the game, and let's have a great summer.
All right.
All right.